Thank you, my dear friend Naushad. Thank you, Rajan. Thank you, Chanjit Banerjee, for this very interesting event that you organized. Let me first of all thank you as a CI as an organization. You talked about just now, Naushad, you mentioned about one very interesting point about setting a higher ambition, ambitious goals. So look at CI, which is actually a business organization of members in business. But what are the goals that you have set for yourself? Seem to be business. Set up goal for the country. So India at 75 is a goal that you have set up. You just now, when I was hearing both of you never mentioned a single word about how industry should be benefited from this. So yes, you have already done something which is exceptionally different, that you have set goals for the country. And you are never even trying to say that I want to develop it in 75 industry of India. You are saying that I want, as Indian, I want to be benefiting from a much better India. Now the question that comes in, therefore I must to congratulate. So you already done that ambitious goal, going beyond your business interest, but thinking about India as a country, as a whole, Indians, how they should benefit. Now coming to this very important point, because Ryan, both you mentioned about partnership. But before that, let's look at it like this. 75 years is a long period. Not as long as the civilization of India is. 12,000 years ago, the agriculture revolution started in the world. And more or less, our civilization can be traced. Longest, probably one of the longest living civilization is India's. So we have a long history. And at the same time, in my opinion, a much brighter future. These 75 years has to be seen in the context of a long history and a promising future. So between the two, many countries in the world can say that they have such a proud history, longest living civilization. That makes a difference. That gives a confidence. That is a points of reference for many of the challenges that we face in the world, how we must have faced them, knowing our ethos, cultural ethos. So that is an advantage we have. And again, what we achieved in 75 years is significant, but in my opinion, we could have achieved more, and I'm sure the promise that is holds for India, we can even achieve even better. And to do that, what is important is partnership. Because when you achieve something, can you say, I have achieved it? Fine. But if you say, we have achieved it, it makes a difference. And we is the key to success in future. And to build that we, CI has done a great job in bringing together different stakeholders on one common platform to see how CI works and how India at 75 works. Just imagine, firstly, when there was India at 60, and Mr. C.K. Prahlad urged that why not we build on India 75. CI immediately jumped on it, worked on it, built on it. And to do that, they built partnership with government, civil society, with different organizations, different individuals. And that's how CI has been able to achieve. And today I'm glad that many of the initiatives that came out of Net 75 are now become flagship program of Government of India, of the country. So partnership is very important. Now coming back to the point, though you never mentioned it, but I would like to highlight it, is the role of industry into all this. When you say industry, it's the entire economic activity of India, which can be captured in corporate sector, can be captured in unorganized sector, but it's the entire economic activity of India. The way India has to fast, better and bigger, all other areas, as you correctly mentioned, comprehensive thinking means social development must happen. It also means that we take care of environment, and particularly we have to now forget taking care of environment, but take care of the damages that have been caused in the past to correct them. And you mentioned correctly, Vishal, about resources. So resources required. Resources are different kind. Natural resources, human resources, financial resources. But one of the key resources that will be necessary for any society to grow will be economic resources as well. Where are they going to come from? They'll come from industry. If the industry doesn't grow, the economic activity will not happen. Economic activity doesn't happen, the progress will not take place. And even the resources that we need to put into social development, correcting environmental damage will not be able. So making economic activity, making industry grow will be a very, very crucial part of India's future growth trajectory. Now, if you look at it, when you say India stand now, there were medal tally Olympics. So India stood at a particular number, 44, what about your number? Same way, India will be ranked in the world, say Human Development Index, that is part the UNDP does. But largely, ranking of India will also be judged on the basis of economic progress. Now that economic progress cannot happen unless what is economic progress? Manufacturing has to grow, industry has to grow, services have to grow, agriculture has to go. More or less, each of one agriculture is 100% or agriculture almost 100% is owned by the private sector. If you go to services, more or less, barring few, like maybe BSL and TNL and such organizations, but barring them, 100% owned by the service sector is owned by the private sector. Go to industry, though predominantly owned by the private sector and partly by public sector, but that one public sector is being privatized. What's the direction then? We are privatizing it with what purpose? What is the objective? That eventually the private sector will be able to harness better growth in those sectors. If that is the case, then in the future growth trajectory, we have to also think about how do you bring enterprise to the fore? Entrepreneurial spirit, how we can unleash it. How can you make each and every individual, by providing skill that CI is already doing through the multi-skill centers, how can we make each and every individual a growth of the engine of growth for in his own capacity, but in the process will add economic value to the country. So if each individual, each enterprise, each smaller and bigger entities in India add to economic growth of a different kind, with the point Naushad you very importantly mentioned, with a moral canvas embedded into it, then what will happen when you suppose economic activity and morality, where does it come into play? One and foremost, you think in a very, it's a very issue, but I'm just talking one example. If each and every enterprise, each and every individual says that a larger public good has to be served while I am building my own business, my own enterprise, my own economic activity, then the challenges we are facing today, whether social inequality, whether not having environmental concerns properly addressed, all of this will get properly taken care of. So what is important is, but at the same, not having economic activity in India, is it going to benefit the larger public good? So to make economic activity increase, there's a role for public policy. That public policy will be how do you allow an entrepreneurial spirit to come to fore? So Skill India is a very important program. It is a more important program should be in the next 75 years of India journey. How can we make India grow faster, better, with all the issues? Now, there is one issue. We thought that we first grow, then we can think of inclusive development as an afterthought. So it is always possible. We can bring inclusive growth embedded into the growth trajectory automatically. So if we do that, and it is possible to do that, we can actually bring about a complete transformative change. Let us look at it like this. When India was supposed to be the second largest economy pre-industrial revolution, that is era, What was the cause of that? What made India such a large country? It was entrepreneurship of at household level. There was skilled people who used to do handicrafts, which will be in demand globally. So that clearly means, or spices, say for example from India, which are also adding to the spice route. Who are growing spices? Was it the government? It was actually grown by the private farmer. And that means that, really speaking, the trade routes that were developed government, the king or whatever is the ruler of that particular time, he helped that growing of the trade route. But the trade was carried out by the individuals in such a way that they became rich, they became prosperous, and in the process, society also could grow better. I think we have to build on a model of that particular kind. My last point before you go into question answer, because I think both of you mentioned the skill part. I personally experience how CI works on skill development. This multi-skill development center you talked about, CI has partnered with an organization that personally I know, I was involved in it, is Manav Sadhan Vikas Sanstha. And they are actually doing tremendous amount of work. CI has got top companies in India. Probably they are the not top class in India alone, though in India, therefore they're top class in India, but they are top class worldwide. Some of them are Fortune 500 companies. Two in skill development in a faraway place called Konkan on west coast of India, the rural areas, and help poor people benefit from such large scale skills. You talked about vision and also the very ambitious target. India is working with this institution, Manav Sadhan Vikas Sanstha, for training people, nurses and others who could eventually be sent to Japan, because Japan is an aging society and they need such collaboration. So just in a rural development, a rural person is going to benefit thanks to CI, the vision of reaching out to the larger good and also reach out to the much bigger global community. So I think this is what is very important. But I think this particular program that you organized and the 2 days you have been organized working on it is a phenomenal building block for the vision that could be developed for India in the next several years. So I congratulate CI. CI has not talked about business or industry, but if we don't grow that, India will never benefit. But the vision that you have articulated for the country is let country be progressing, and we as business will participate into that, and let country benefit, which in our is a dividend that companies can get because country is developing, and the national growth is the dividend that we like to enjoy. So thank you very much for this, and I really congratulate you once again. And I said all this with my personal experience of watching CI, particularly like you, Naushad or Rajan, or the DG of CI, Mr. Chandajit Banerjee. What type of personal beliefs you have that I've experienced personally. And therefore, I'm saying all this, and each of the word that I said is not even the slightest of exaggeration. I can clearly feel that this is the kind of national build organization that CI has become. That is what will actually spur growth the years to come. And growth not just can be calculated or captured in terms of GDP, but also far better and far bigger canvas that we can all see ourselves in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Suresh. Thank you for those comments, and which are entirely, I think, entirely in line with the vision and the leadership that you've always helped us with. We particularly appreciate your comments about CI. You know, when Chandrajit, you mentioned Chandrajit, when Chandrajit became DG of CI in 2008, he told me that, you know, he described CI as a development institution, and CI had always been a development institution dating back to the early 70s, but he articulated those words. And when he said development institution, you know, my reaction at the time was, you know, no, we're not the government of India. You know, we're an industry association. But as I've become more and more familiar with the work that we do in CI across so many different areas, I can only say Absolutely, development institution is what we're all about. That's the broader mission of CI. It's what everyone tries to do as a part of the work we do in CI, and we recognize that the best way to actually create a wonderful future for Indian industry is to create first a wonderful future for India. Because if we have a wonderful future for India, everyone benefits, including industry and every firm in it. So that's the broader purpose that we indeed have. I also greatly appreciate your sentence, which I think is a wonderful sentence, and I will use it in future, where you said "we" is the key to the future, not I. And I think that emphasis on "we" of what we can achieve together, as opposed to what an individual seeks to put their own name on, is a very important part of how we must go about our achievements. Let me ask a question, and then Rajan will ask a question. So, I wanted to come back to this theme of moral leadership. And as you know, Suresh, one of the things that has been talked about, particularly in the context of the US, is this concept of soft power. And they say that, well, you have hard power is economic muscle, weapons, feet on the ground, all of that. Soft power, as you know, is culture, cultural influence. It's a variety of different things that are much more subtle, but can be enormously powerful. And to me, one of the best examples of soft power are if we take two examples. One is our film industry, Bollywood. You can go to Cairo, you can go to Hanoi, and invariably I would get into a taxi in Hanoi or a taxi in Cairo, and the fellow will look at me and say, where are you from? Oh, you're from India. And then he'll ask me, do you know Shah Rukh Khan? As if, must be some personal friend. And then Bollywood is known everywhere. And as a result, India is known everywhere. And the same for cricket. Our official national game is hockey, but cricket is the game where we are most associated and most powerful. Again, it's by building these two areas, our entertainment industry and our sports achievements, on the basis of drawing the best in India together, and then letting that stand for India as our soft power. And I wondered if you could reflect a little on this role of soft power going forward over the next 25 years. How do we use this soft power? We are liked as a country. There are some of our neighbors who are less liked. So we are liked as a country. How do we use this liking for India as something that we can tap into as a way of advancing our own ambition and aspirations?
It's a very, thank you, Naushad, and very important question. First and foremost, when you say that we are liked abroad, I think we have to increase the scale at which people like India. And to do that, we have to somehow make each and Indian aware that the behavior of one Indian is going to damage the cause of India in a very significant way. Each Indian goes out and speaks in a different way. For example, the examples of Indian tourists going out and not behaving the way they are expected to behave, it creates a bad impression that Indians are like this. Because how are the people going to judge Indian? Each person will be judged as a representative of a larger population of India. This is very important at each one of us. Secondly, the likability part. Secondly, I think as a nation, as a society, as a country, also we must come out with certain characteristic, which whatever happens must be followed, which then the rest of the world will realize these are the integrated ingredients of India's characteristics. So they will say, India is this, they will definitely behave like this. There is some problem somewhere, India's response will be exactly like it is, and that's what people will expect. So I think again we'll have to build it to our foreign policy, into our entire big policy. So we'll have to do that. Now, coming to the very interesting point about what is the next 25 years soft power. I think you're absolutely right about Bollywood, sports, and others. In my opinion, there is one more, and that is India's lifestyle. See, look at it some years ago, and in that last 75 years, we have seen it more. Of course, we can go back a little bit and say even Swami Vivekananda, when he traveled and went to Chicago, people were attracted to the thought of India, which he articulated. And ever since, you must have seen so many of them. If you look at ISKCON, for example, it is Indian society, Krishna consciousness. It has become a global movement, and many others who have contributed to it after that. So India's appeal to rest of the world, attraction towards India can come from India's own lifestyle, whether it is represented in form of yoga, whether it is represented in form of the kind of life we live. But this is a very important element of soft power. You can actually, so many of I know people, now just imagine, thanks to, of course, Prime Minister that he declared yoga as an international way and therefore it is practiced in all parts of the world more than before. But what it means is India's lifestyle can be an attraction. Now, how do you make that lifestyle as a symbol of India? But in that, there is a challenge. While rest of the world want to follow that our own style, at least here there could be an attraction towards the other side of the world. And this always happens. The grass is greener on the other side. But if you can actually, therefore, make this as a strong celebrity, in not celebrity in terms of money, I'm saying, but in terms of identifying that with India's own culture, there will be a lot of attraction for people like to do. I know, particularly there are many famous personalities in the world, top class functional celebrities, who say that when I get stressed, I get problems, I like to use this India's way of doing it, whether it's meditation, whether it is yoga, and many others. So, can we make this as a very important idea of India that can be taken by and accepted by others? And you mentioned why you mentioned it, I can definitely sense it. Is soft power is extremely important. Why? Because that's one thing which it doesn't need to spend huge amount of money to market it. But at the same time, once it is ingrained into the mind of other person, then that soft power attracts. The attraction of that soft power is so strong that people will come here and try to do it. And then when they come here and try to do it, of course, tourism will benefit is one thing. But they will like to do business with a country like this because they feel that this is the country which has this strong ethos and attraction that I want to follow. So this is a very important part. So I fully understand in the next 25 years' time, particularly when the world is entering a huge uncertainty. People are struggling to find answers. And because what happened was till this pandemic came, or even before that, till 2008, when the financial crisis came, people were thinking that this is normal. Things are now going to happen only in this particular way. Till this sudden shock came, people started wondering whether what I was thinking as normal is really a normal or things are going to change. And when this is happening, when the uncertainty is becoming order of the day, at that particular time, people will look forward to something. How do I live my life? Lifestyle issues, the philosophy of life will become far more important than just earning money or adding to the businesses. So at that particular time, the thought of India and these particular lifestyle issues, if you can make them as somebody who can more and more accessible to that, it will become a huge soft power India can offer, which not many countries in the world, I can clearly see, can offer it as an alternate thought how to live better.
Thank you, Suresh. I think, yeah, absolutely. Over to you, Rajan. Sorry.
No, I think, the soft power point that you've raised, really, again, looking forward, how does India, approach 2047 and beyond, as you rightly mentioned. One other very strong power that seems to be, a place where India can play very strongly is technology. right? I think what you said, we are in uncertain times. India is already looked upon as, a key country when it comes to technology, digital. And if you remember, Sureshji, the pillars on which, India at 75 has been built is technological vitality, which gives economic strength, moral leadership, transparency, everything coming with that. And as you rightly mentioned, the economic activity of India is, across organized, unorganized sectors, sometimes which is not truly representative, in its right form. Technology is enabling us to converge that, strengthen that, and as you're seeing many other developed countries and leading countries in the world are striding ahead, leveraging that, So one other point would be love to understand your thoughts is how do we take these strengths that we have, right? The human resource capital that can become the carriers of technology around the world and many other things, along with global outcomes, whether it's in climate change, whether it's on health and education, and technology and digital working together, for us over the next 25 years.
No, Rajan, so you're absolutely right. That whether we like it or not, it's a technology which will drive the future growth of the world. And again, when I'm using the word growth, I'm not using it in a limited way of saying growth, economic growth alone. The growth of a society, growth of an individual, growth of nation, growth, collective humanity, all of that is going to happen driven by the technology. It has always happened. In fact, even the good old days when we had a stone age, that was also technology because they could use a weapon easily using that kind of technology. But technology has now been a driving force of the future challenges as well as to deal with future growth, development. I would say, but development is better. Definitely going to be happening for sure. Now the question is, we are going to develop technologies and will be like to be a leader in that. There are many others already doing it. We should be also conscious of the fact that if you look at technology, it will be eventually to be commercialized, we'll have to use it on a larger scale, and to ensure that the intellectual property of that is properly protected. So patents and the new IPs registration. So where do we stand today, really speaking? Unfortunately, not very high. In fact, some countries were nowhere there 75 years ago. They were not in IP at all, almost 75 years ago, have now become top class creators of IPs. So now what we have to do, that doesn't matter, that's past. Or even we should not be worrying too much about the present. It is their problem, it doesn't matter. As you correctly mentioned, what should be the vision of India for the next 75 years, 2047 to begin with? What should be the vision? Is to develop technology-oriented country. And we said technology, there are many areas of technology. One point you very importantly mentioned, though in a passing way, but very important in my own thinking, is linking the unorganized sector and the organized sector through technology. Like people living in rural areas, people living in urban areas can be linked through technology. And that's a very important vision. In fact, if you talk about inequality in India, it is lack of access to some facilities, lack of having not the same standard of services to be rendered to all people in different parts of the country. That can happen through technology, whether it's medical service, whether it's education, very many others. So that's one part of the technology development that we should think about secondly. Other part is whether we should think about it very seriously. I'm also thinking aloud when I'm saying all this. Whether we want to compete with technology only with the top best technology countries in the world today. We should do that eventually. But maybe in the medium term, I think our technology development should focus on countries which are not fully developed, developing countries, Africa, some part of Asia. If we think about them, there are so many similarities between the developmental challenges that we face and they face. So if we develop technologies which will benefit people to begin with, but also benefit that section of society. So globalization of technology will also happen and may be happening with a much larger number of people who will benefit from it. And what earlier Naushad was asking me about a moral canvas, just imagine if you focus on this part by saying, I'm going to develop a technology which is not going to benefit the richest country of the world, but going to benefit the poorest country of the world, then that also gives us a big strength to say that yes, I care for those for whom nobody wants to care for, really. So that makes a difference. But also it makes commercial sense that but again, coming to C.K. Prahlad's whole idea, who thought about it, is the bottom of the pyramid. If you really think about technology development for them, that is another part. The other part of technology, in my opinion, and I think that's something that we can play a key role, is moral aspect of development of new technologies. When you think about, say, artificial intelligence, what kind of artificial intelligence can do anything? And combined with other emerging technologies, you can create a monster actually if you want. But really, do we really want to do that? As we would have felt whether it was necessary to use the technology that we had to prepare a nuclear bomb. Was it really necessary? We could have used it for something else. And as India has always professed, that we want nuclear technologies for peaceful purposes. So the aspect of moral aspect of new technologies, if we can keep developing a protocol for that, and start developing our own ways, morally tenable technologies in the emerging technology field, not in some other field. Same artificial intelligence, but India should come and try to do something different and try to show it to the world that this is my technology, not be as good as you because you have billions of dollars you can pour into it, but my technology is based on morality, which will not actually violate any of the human concerns. If you can do that, will also be important. But Rajan, I fully agree with you that next 25 years and beyond, the technology will be key. We cannot, and we will do it to our own peril by shutting our doors to technological development. That we can never do and should not do, and we should be at the front of technology development. And to do that, we have to think about different aspects so that we don't necessarily will compete with them over a period of time, but we start finding out a niche area. Our technology development can benefit humanity more, also make commercial sense because that's going to be used by the largest of society. And on the other side, we also work it in a way that morally develop new emerging technologies will be important element of India's identity.
Oh, thank you. I think your point is so well taken, right? Like, how can India's technological expertise, impact the world's development outcomes at the bottom of the pyramid at scale and size, and on the other hand, really identify how man-machine will work together and what's the ethics of that, or everything else that's happening in emerging technologies. I think that will ensure that India is at a global leadership position, not only from what we can do in our country, but how we can a key role, at a global stage. I think which is something that is only time is waiting for us to go and occupy. So, thank you so much, Sureshji. I think it's been such an inspiring discussion, with you, and always so energizing to be in your presence. So I'm now going to hand it over to Naushad. We don't always want the time to stop when we are with you, but we wanted to continue, but unfortunately we will have to, close. So I'm going to hand it over to Naushad to kind of close this session and have the last word. Over to you, Naushad.
Thanks, Rajan. And Suresh, just to thank you very warmly for being with us today. As you know, we both, Rajan and I, described you as a thought leader for us in CI, a thought leader for the country, a thought leader for us in India at 75. And you've demonstrated that yet again in our session. And I think your message on we is the key to the future, not I, your message on the role of industry in creating not just a great future for itself, but a great future for not just for the country, but for each individual in it, skilling and making millions of individual growth engines that between them add up to a very substantive achievement, as opposed to thinking about individual achievement and inclusive growth as an afterthought, thinking about it as actually the source of growth itself. So I think your message of think big, think whole is very welcome. Think moral. These three elements, I think if we can put an India at 100 agenda together, that is think big, think whole, think moral, we will really have something very powerful. So thank you again for being with us. Thank you for providing, as always, your insights and inspiration. Thank you.
Naushad and Rajan, and also my other colleagues here, thank you very much for doing what you're doing. And I'm sure, as you correctly mentioned, that another 25 years are waiting for us. I think those 25 years should be better than these last 75 years. That should be your ambition. Thank you very much. God bless you all. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you.